One of the mitzvahs that the Torah teaches us about in Parshas Behar is really a mitzvah that's applicable to this time period, the time of Sfira, where we're supposed to be focusing on v'ahavta l'recha kamocha, loving our neighbors, caring for our neighbors as ourselves. The Torah says, "V'chiyamucha chicha." If your neighbor, if your brother becomes impoverished, umataya doimach, and they come to you and they're struggling, and they need to be sustained on some level, vechazakta, strengthen them, give them support, help them to be able to get their feet back on the ground. There's a beautiful story told of Reb Chaim of Tzanz, that there was a woman who was impoverished and who was a very kind woman, who came to Reb Chaim of Tzanz and said that she needed money in order to make Shabbos. She wasn't able to buy Shabbos. So Reb Chaim of Tzanz asked her, I've heard that you sell apples. Isn't it true that you sell apples in the marketplace? And she responded to him, she said, yeah, they say that my apples are not so good. And therefore, because of that, today, as an example, I haven't sold any apples, and therefore I don't have any money to buy food for Shabbos. So Rav Chaim of Tzanz went to the marketplace and went to her table where she had all of her apples, and he stood up and he said, Jewish people, all people who are here, there are good apples here. Who wants to buy beautiful, good apples? And immediately, many people gathered around her table in order to buy apples, because of the fact that Reb Chaim of Tzanz had said that these apples were good. And it ended up that she had much more than she needed, not only to make Shabbos, but to be able to keep her and sustain her for quite some time. And finally, when Reb Chaim of Tzanz was leaving that table in the marketplace, was leaving her, so he says to her, he says, look, didn't you see? You had great apples, you have delicious apples. The only problem is that the people of the town didn't even know that you had such great apples. And so here Reb Chaim of Tzanz, instead of just simply giving her money in order for her to buy food for Shabbos, he wanted her to see that it wasn't only about the money for this Shabbos, but it was the ability for her not only to sustain herself, but to look differently at herself, to look differently at her business, and how it is that she can really change her outlook. And instead of seeing herself as someone who's impoverished, someone who's poor, she could look at herself in the positive light. And because of that, she could attract more people to come and buy her apples. And what he gave to her was not simply money that could sustain her for a couple of days. What he gave to her was the strength to be able to look at herself in a different way. When we see people who are struggling, we have the obligation, the Torah obligation, not to simply look at them and say, oh, I feel so bad for them. Oh, maybe I can get them some money because I feel bad for them. That's all wonderful. But even a greater chizuk that would be to them is to be able to tell them, look, you might be going through a rough patch, but I'm sure things will get better. How could I help? How could I strengthen you? Do I know of someone who could possibly help you? Let me somehow, some way, give you some support in order to pick you up so that you're back on your feet again. May we be zocher, may we merit to take care of all those who we know who are struggling, and to give them the strength to get back up, to move forward, and to eventually succeed once again. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.